Well, hello, everybody. Grateful to be with us here at ULT San Diego for the Aquarian series. Today, the title of the presentation is Elementals, and that's going to be given us by Laura Gray. So before we begin, a reading. This is from The Voice of the Silence. Thou canst create this day thy chances for thy morrow. In the great journey, causes sown each hour bear each of its harvest of effects. For rigid justice rules the world with mighty sweep of never erring action. It brings to mortals lives of weal or woe, the karmic progeny of all our former thoughts and deeds, and rest content with fate. Such is thy karma, the karma of the cycle of thy births, the destiny of those who, in their pain and sorrow, are born along with thee, rejoice and weep from life to life, chained to thy previous actions. Act thou for them today, and they will act for thee tomorrow. 'Tis from the bud of renunciation of the self that springeth the sweet fruit of final liberation. Follow the wheel of life. Follow the wheel of duty to race and kin, to friend and foe, and close thy mind to pleasures as to pain. Exhaust the law of karmic retribution. Gain cities for thy future birth. And so we now give to you our own Laura Gray.
Good evening, everyone. And welcome to this talk on elementals. It's interesting considering the reading of the voice today to think of these elementals as our karmic progeny, something that belongs to us. It's also interesting to consider this talk in relationship to last week's talk about the knower of the field and the field. And we could consider these elementals as the field that we are working in. Last week's talk showed the beauty and the symmetry of well-placed quotes and the insights to be gained by each unique combination. We can see the knower and the field are in fact one, that we are the makers of all the conditions we find ourselves in, and we experience those conditions, each one of us, in our own degree. Children see the elemental world around them. They sense that they are being watched, that they are not alone in the room. Sometimes they see and feel these elementals, and books have been written to acknowledge their experience. In the plays of Gilbert and Sullivan, there is a band of invisible creatures that the rest of the actors are oblivious to. These creatures go about the stage setting it up, and then with glee, they kind of step to the side to see what the humans will do on the stage. These too we could consider in Gilbert and Sullivan's plays, these little elementals that follow us around, these invisible creatures. Findhorn in Scotland is another example of communicating with elementals, who instructed the gardeners as to what the plants needed to grow. Elementals make up the fabric of our fables and myth, and there is also a science behind elementals. An understanding of elementals brings us closer to understanding the immense task that we have before us as eternal pilgrims. Now, let's see, there it is. In this picture, we see here different cycles that we find ourselves in. We have the cycle of the Manvantara, the cycle of the planetary system. We have the cycle of birth and death, and we have the 24-hour cycle that we see there of waking, dreaming, and dreamless sleep. The lives that move in these cycles with us are the same lives and elementals that were with us in previous cycles, whether it is the cycle of a Manvantara, our cycle of birth and death, or our 24-hour cycle. These same lives are with us. Everything, the Secret Doctrine says on page 274 of volume 1, everything in the universe, throughout all its kingdoms, is conscious. That is, endowed with a consciousness of its own kind and on its own plane of perception. There is no separateness, and each of these lives carries the impression that we have given them. As John Muir wrote, when we try to pick anything out by itself, we find it hitched to everything else in the universe. And from Mr. Judge's Theosophical Forum, he writes, every thought leaves a seed in the mind or manas of the thinker, no matter how fugitive the thought was. The whole system of such small seeds will go to make up a larger seed of thought, and thus constitute a man of this or that or other general character. Thoughts, then, are highly important, for as the Buddha said, we are made up of thought, built of thought. As we think, so we act, and will act. And as we act and think, so will we suffer or rejoice, and the whole world with us. When considering this idea, we can remember that every thought we think coalesces with an elemental. The electric and magnetic affinities between man and nature is an article that was written by H.P. Blavatsky. And Mr. Judge, too, indicates that our brain is a generator of force. So there's an electrical and magnetic affinity taking place in every moment of our day. Every being and naturally formed object is in its beginning a spiritual or monadic entity, which having its origin in the same one life, the one unity or the one element from the highest plane of existence, must have as many relations with that higher plane as it has with the material or sensuous plane in which it physically develops itself. Each according to the species evolves from its center. We have another person coming in here. Just a minute. Evolves from its center. An essential aura, which has a positive and negative magnetic relation with the essential aura of every other. Any idea of separateness is an illusion. Elementals, though, do not have their own intelligence and volition, but carry the impression of the thoughts and energies given to them. This slide here, we see some examples of water crystals. This is where water has been taken and frozen, and then a picture taken of that crystal. This work is done by Mr. Emoto, a Japanese photographer. And these examples show this connection of thought and the water itself and the formations that we see. The effect of thought on the formation of the snowflake, and as we'll see later, on plants too, and how meditation can purify a jar of impure water or can help a plant to grow. Mr. Emoto claims that the human speech or thoughts have a dramatic effect on water. He claims that depending on the nature of the speech or thought directed at the water, when the water is frozen, its crystals will be beautiful or ugly, depending on whether the thoughts were positive or negative. Another explorer of this inner world is Cleve Baxter. He worked with lie detectors, and one day he decided to attach his lie detector to his philodendron. The philodendron has a very large, strong leaf, so he thought that would be a good place to start. And he emanated a thought to burn that leaf. That's when something very strange happened. The second he made that decision, before he even figured out how he would burn the leaf, the lie detector made an unusual pattern on his tracing paper. After double checking the equipment and learning, and obviously he knew how to read the results, and he figured there was no way that this was a coincidence. The plant was reading his mind. Theosophy would add something else to that conclusion, though. We would say that the plant wasn't necessarily reading his mind, but was actually picking up the thought impressions that he was putting in his mind, showing that elemental energy again, because the plant is made up of earth, water, fire, and air, and its fabric is made up of these elementals, of which our thoughts coalesce with. We also see that a mother on one side of the world will experience harm coming to her child from such a great distance. This also indicates a current, a unity, a oneness of the cause and the effect of the one who is of the unity that exists. Bacteria, too, we know in different places around the world will change their behavior simultaneously. Which brings us to an interesting story written by Mr. Judge called The Skins of the Earth. And I'll read a portion of it here. I saw that the evil mist had gathered strength in one part of the place and had destroyed the harmony and swiftness of so many little beings. That the great circling globe was moving off its axis, circling more and more, so that I knew that upon whatever earth this happened, great changes would occur. And that in the path of the mist there would sweep over man epidemics of disease and crime. Horrified at such impending calamities, I sought for an answer and looked towards my guide. As I did so, he disappeared, and upon the wall his voice seemed to paint itself in living letters that themselves gave out a sound. It is the thoughts of men. I hid my face, appalled at owning such a heritage. And when I looked again, the great jets spurted through the skins of the earth, thoughts spouting and pouring out in miasmic streams. The ocean of life, the visible and the invisible side of ourselves and nature around us, we come to realize that it is made up of a vastness of intelligences involved in that fullness of space. As mind beings, we are the makers of the conditions we find ourselves in. But we can be of good cheer, as the voice of the silence states, that when we help nature and work in harmony with her, she will respond in kind. From The Secret Doctrine on page 474, HPB is telling a student that the development of the principles of the earth is assisted and carried on largely by the development of humanity. Our thoughts are the cast-off clothing that nature uses. The earth and man evolve together. And here's the quote. Living entities or centers of force in the astral and mental planes, also known as nature spirits. They are called elementals because they are supposed to be the forces behind the four primordial elements, namely fire, earth, air, and water. The fire elements are called salamanders, those of the earth. Gnomes are of the air. Sylphs are of water. No, sylphs, are of fire. And of water is the undines. Sorry, I left something out there. In the traditions of various cultures, they are known under various names and appearances, such as elves, dwarfs, genes, brownies, goblins, banshees, fairies, trolls, devs, etc. The terms elementals should not be confused with elementaries, which are the astral bodies of dead people. Elementals themselves, according to HPB, have no form, but are centers of force, as we said. They are without tendencies or moral character. They are, however, capable of being controlled and directed by human thought. The shapes of which they are seen is due to the preconceived images of the person seeing them, or due to the collective impressions of those people. Such collective impressions help to create a definite shape of the nature spirits. Sins of humanity affect the earth, and the joys of humanity affect the earth. And you will see that when humanity is at its worst, then they will neither have harvest nor anything growing. And the earth will be as in perfect sterility and despair. But on the other hand, the joys of humanity, like the joy impressed upon the water molecule that we saw in the picture, will crystallize into a harmonious form. When we radiate the higher qualities of our nature, the earth nature will respond. And that's really important for us to understand as we navigate. I have a hard time finding where my slide button is, so excuse me while I fiddle here. Here we go. The other thing to consider in regards to our understanding of elementals is that they are largely responsible for the number of psychic phenomena that we see and have heard about. In the after-death states, elementals animate the astral shells left behind by souls who have entered Devachan after the second death. It causes the shells to appear as if living, since they carry the personal memories of the person who just died. It is these that the mediums usually contact during seances. Another aspect of this psychic phenomena is under the control of a powerful human will. The elementals can be directed to produce phenomena, such as moving objects, producing sounds, etc. Accounts have been recorded by people who witnessed that phenomena by H.P. Blavatsky, that was able to produce through the control of these elementals, such as tapping sounds, making tables, and movable. Elementals are also said to be controlled through the proper use of color, form, sound, number, and substances. Elementals Elementals are also connected with the animation of thought forms produced by human beings. Due to elementals, thoughts become active intelligences after they are produced and may persist for a long or short period depending on the intensity with which they were produced. This diagram might be familiar to many of you. It shows the lower elemental group on the left side as that spirit descending into matter and the gradual evolution of form. When it reaches the mineral kingdom, it must be remembered that it's not the monad that becomes a mineral. It's just experiencing the form. And then from there, we have the reascent into spirit through the vegetable, the animal, and the human form. And this diagram helps us to visualize the order of our operation, the movement of our evolution, so to speak. And the formless elements or elementals or lives, as they proceed to the human the mineral kingdom, they gain experience. They're not self-conscious as we are, but they are conscious. And so our karma operates differently on these on the elemental kingdom and on the mineral, the vegetable, and the animal kingdom as well, because their evolution is by natural impulse at this point in time. It's only karma operates differently, though, for the humanity when we've reached self-consciousness. We experience karma on all 7 planes of our being. The monadic or cosmic essence, if we can use such a term, that experiences and gains experience through the mineral, the vegetable, and the animal. Though the same throughout the series of cycles, from the lowest elemental up to the Deva kingdom, yet differs in its scale of progression. So it sounds like the monad manifesting as a mineral would have gone through the 3 elemental stages prior to reaching the mineral kingdom. The center of force would gather experience from its close proximity to humanity before reaching the mineral kingdom, gaining whatever degrees of experience and awareness before it reaches that point of individuality in our humanity. So, another excerpt from Mr. Judge's Skins of the Earth. And the reason I picked these pictures is because while these are on the physical plane, these lives live in our oceans, they seem to have a similarity to the formless plane in the astral. That we can see a kind of astral element to them. It's like they are transitioning from the invisible to the visible within the salty ocean. And Mr. Judge, in his article on Skins of the Earth, describes them as such. These little beings were of every color and form. Some were of the appearance similar to that of man himself. Others appeared like star blossoms of the sea, their pure tints waxing and waning as they throbbed with an interior pulse of light. Whatever their shape, these seeming evanescent, translucent, and easily dissipated in their real essence. The creatures were centers of energy. Oh, here comes someone else. A nucleus around which light condensed, now in this form, now and that, with constant progression of type and form. Some were more swift and harmonious in their movements than others, and these I understood were more progressed in the scale of being. Such had a larger orbit, and satellites circled about them. Of such systems the place was full, and all owed obedience to the subtle and interior power which I could not discern. Each system existed for the service of all the rest. Each complemented and sustained the others as they swept onward in a harmony that was of labor and love. Their object seemed twofold. They assisted in maintaining the revolutions of the earth upon which its axis, in guiding it in its orbit. They also grew through the ever-increasing swiftness of their own motions and into greater splendor and brightness, approaching greater intelligence, coming ever nearer to self-conscious reason and love, and as they grew, stimulated the latent spark in the metals and all the underworld growth, as the lambent torch of flame awakens the flame. In Isis Unveiled, HBB says, as by gradual progression from the cloudlet to the development of the physical body of man, and from the universal ether to the incarnate human spirit, they traced one uninterrupted series of entities. These evolutions were from the world of spirit, the invisible cause, into the world of gross matter, and back again to the source of all things. From the elementals through the mineral, vegetable, and animal kingdoms to the midway point of man, a self-conscious being is now on the ascending arc back to spirit. And so here we see these very ethereal creatures, that live in that salty ocean. Some of them very far away from any kind of sunlight, and some of them capable of producing their own light, which is interesting. Here we have another one. They're so beautiful. Lauren Harris, one of the group of 7, indicates something very similar to what HBB says too, that visible nature is but a distorted reflection of a more perfect world, and the creative individual viewing her is inspired to perceive within and behind her many garments that which is timeless and entirely beautiful. I wonder if he was referring to what occultism sees, that the effects of the elemental forces are the direct causes producing them, the intelligent divine workmen, that there is an intimate connection of those elementals, guided by an unerring hand of the rulers. Their correlation, we might recall it, with the elements of pure matter results in our terrestrial phenomena such as light, heat, and magnetism. But we give the name to the drivers and to these guiding intelligences, the ruling Diane Choans. The elementals, the nature forces, are the acting, though invisible, or rather imperceptible, secondary causes, in themselves the effects of a primary cause behind the veil of terrestrial phenomena. a supersensuous state of matter in motion, a nature force. But behind even this, the higher and noumenal causes, the intelligences from which these essences radiate, these states of mother generating the countless milliards of elementals or psychic nature spirits. As Mr. Judge says, every form we see is made up of an aggregate of beings. It was interesting in considering this idea of elementals. From the glossary under the tree of life, that we can see that the abode of the Petries is actually the elementals in a certain context of a lower order, and that these elementals became the bow tree of the Buddhists the world over, since Gautama Buddha reached the highest knowledge and nirvana while under such a tree. So it's interesting to maybe to contemplate this in a way that this tree of life, these elementals, are like we're all sitting under that tree. We're all surrounded by these elementals of this lower order, and we are impressing them. And through them, we will reach that knowledge, that highest knowledge and nirvana, that they are an essential part of our evolution. Not sure if I put that very well, but contemplating this and meditating upon this, it just brought such a beauty to mind and a unity of life. So, to sum up our understanding of elementals today, we should keep in mind the following. The one element, the one life, one monad, which opens the beginning of a period of manifestation, whether that manifestation be of a lifetime, of a manvantara, or of our daily cycle of waking, dreaming, and dreamless. There is one monad that opens up the beginning of that day as well. A series of differentiations begins. Every form is a condition that gives experience to the divine intelligence that radiates from that one source. We need to keep in mind, from the one on our fourth globe, we have 4 elements of 7 that are visible to us at this time. Every element is dual in its nature and has a visible and an invisible side, a material and a spiritual side, a cause and a visible effect. We have evolved through globes, rounds, and races, through earth, water, fire, and air at each turn. And the 5th is not yet visible to us, ether, and beyond that, 2 more still unknown to us. These form the nerves of nature and permeate the globe we inhabit. They circulate through every part of our bodies. The glossary calls elementals the spirits of the elements, creatures evolved within those 4 elements. Except for a few of the higher elementals that we saw on the in the chart on the extreme right, except for a few of the higher elementals and their rulers, for the most part, elementals are forces of nature and not individualized beings. Every species, every tree, everything in nature, every kingdom of nature has its own elements, its own Diane Johans, or what they call elemental spirits. And that's from Secret Doctrine Dialogues, page 167. All the variations of oak trees and any species of all the kingdoms are broken rays, HPB says, from which the one ray, and on every plane, expressed until expressed on the earth plane, the most densest. Everyone breaks into an intelligence on its own plane, and every plant has its intelligence. There are no two blades of grass the same, and no two water crystals the same. The earth, we should keep in mind, is sevenfold. It breathes and has its circulatory system, as the stories that Mr. Judge told. The elemental lives are circulating between us and through us on 7 planes. We attract to ourselves elementals by the thoughts and feelings that we have. The cyclic law of karma and re-embodiment rules over ourselves and every atom of matter. The elementals record and reflect and undergo change side by side with mankind. The alterations of matter correspond to the alterations of the thinker, of humanity, individually and collectively. The other thing to keep in mind is we are not alone in this effort, that there are countless beings who have gone through the experience that we're going through now and who have stayed behind to help our humanity. There was a time when the elemental world was friendlier to mankind, but it is through our own selfishness and our own ignorance and our materialistic tendencies that have grown with the ages that the elemental world was no longer helpful to us. It's we ourselves that put that impress into them. And it's we ourselves that will change that impress. This elemental world, being that unconscious force, returns or reacts upon humanity the exact force and energy that we generate. This occurs for each human being, for each family, for each nation and period of history. Every monad reflects every other. Every monad is a living mirror of the universe within its own sphere. Every monad or elemental is a looking glass that can speak. And to finish, we have a quote from Red Crow. It is the Hopi belief, it is our belief, that if you are not spiritually connected to the earth and understand the spiritual reality of how to live on earth, it is likely that you won't make it. The spirit world is everything. Our body is mostly water. Water is sacred, air is sacred. Our DNA is made out of the same DNA as the tree. The tree breathes what we exhale. We need what the tree exhales. So we have a common destiny with the tree. Everything is spiritual. Everything is spirit. You should treat all things as spirit and realize that we are one family. And that's the talk. So we hope that we can open up to discussion.
That was marvelous. I'm going to be chairperson.
Thank you. Wonderful, Desiree.
I
You have a
wish.
knowledge
No, I wish.
of elementals.
I almost wish I didn't have the chairperson responsibility today because I'm just want to marinate in this presentation and your words and your slides and just feeling going back to when I was a child and remembering how I related to nature.
Mhm.
And I'm sure that's what you're kind of thinking too when you're going through these, taking you back, doesn't it?
Well, one of the things that um, we find when preparing for a talk, and especially when you're doing a topic like elementals, every class that you go to, every study from the Bhagavad Gita to the Secret Doctrine to some of B.P. Wadia's articles, all of a sudden they've all changed with this new idea of elementals and
Mhm.
beginning to realize them. And and as you say, when you marinate in that idea in our meditation, the unity that comes about, the awareness that comes about is very difficult to put into words,
It
you
is.
know?
One of the
Yeah.
things that you mentioned, was how children sense that there's somebody watching them or things watching them.
Yes.
They actually do hear voices,
Yeah.
and it's not like, a real loud voice. They're very almost like whispers, and
Mhm.
I have to wonder too if they see these elementals, whether they be in a garden or in a tree or, um,
Yeah.
they're probably more, but, it would be such a natural thing. It wouldn't be something like they would go home to mom and say, "Look what I saw," because it comes so natural. It
Mm.
wouldn't be something upsetting or unusual in any way.
Yeah.
Um, but that's the wonder. And another thing too, when you talked about this interconnection that we have with water and thinking about how much water is within us,
Mhm.
what are we doing with that water within us when we have negative tapes going on in our head, when we say negative things to ourselves? I always say you won't say it to if it's something you don't say or would never say to your own child, never say it to yourself
Well,
because it hurts.
yeah.
It hurts that little child or whatever you want to call it, but that part of you that is more real than this exterior person. But think about the water that when we use those words and that tone, that vibration in a negative way, how it hurts just the living entities within us that we're
Yes.
responsible for.
That's right.
So I just wanted to
Well, that's why we
share
picked the
that. I mean,
reading.
it's really,
Yeah.
really went to my heart. Um,
Yeah. Well, that's why
but
I picked the reading from the voice of the silence. Be of good cheer,
yes,
because occultism, repetition is necessary for occultism. The cycles of waking and sleeping, the cycles of birth and death, the cycles of the Manvantara, they're all there to help us on this journey of impressing the lives that are around us. And there will come a time when we realize that the work, as you pointed out, it has to be unremitting. It has to be uninterrupted. It has to come with us through our day, where we don't let one thought escape our mind unexamined. That's the work that we have ahead of us, because the only way to evolve is in and through and with these elementals and these lives that surround us. There's no getting away from it, I don't think, unless someone's got any ideas. But I think it's our work, because it's not only to evolve ourselves, it's like the voice or the secret doctrine says, we have to raise up all matter to conscious godhood. And the only way to do it is to enter into it. And that's our big task. But I think we have two hands up. So I'll let you.
Hi, Judy. Go ahead, please. You're muted.
Hear me?
We do.
Hey, yes. Wonderful talk by Laura and your comments. Thank you both very much. According to the secret doctrine, it would seem that everything is an elemental. I mean, if you think of cells, atoms, quanta, or what even might be down to an atom on another plane, something really indivisible. But everything is evolving, and you and I are monads. I mean, we're conscious beings, but we evolved out of a lower state. Now, really, the question is if everything is self conscious, then, why don't we know it? There is a doctor named Joe Dispenza who says that you can create your own day. I heard him talk recently. There's an old film called What the Bleep Do We Know, which goes into the same subject. And it shows all these little cells dancing and everything. Well, it seems that we are indeed in a field of consciousness, and yet there are still those who think that there is such a thing as unconsciousness, empty space, and inorganic objects. And it would seem that this is not the right view, but yet that view persists. This other view does make more sense, I think, but it is not fully accepted in academia. So, is it would it be correct to say then that we're really all elementals, and yet we're all evolving toward monads of a higher nature?
Yeah, that's right. We wonder, looking at the Desiree brought out the mythological and the children in regards to elementals, but there's a scientific side to this idea of elementals, and the science is starting to move in that direction in some areas. The science of it is still, of course, considered pseudoscience, like the work of Emoto or the work of Baxter and others. And even in the quantum field of physics, they're beginning to understand that you cannot observe matter without changing it. So they're beginning to understand that there is a relationship between the mind and the matter, and that you can't separate the two in that study. So what do you think, Judy? Do you think that there is maybe they use different terminology, but are they moving more towards this idea of elements and elementals?
Well, I think some scientists are being more aware that perhaps there is spirit, within the quanta, and that there is intelligent design. Of course, this doesn't mean that any one religion is true, but there never has been developed a unified field theory. I mean, on the
No,
one
not yet.
level, Einstein time is a constant, and in the quantum field, there is no such thing as time, perhaps because consciousness affects everything we do in the observation of the quanta, which you pointed out.
Yeah.
So there are a few scientists like David Bohm, I think is one. Other, um, well, there's several who write in this way.
Hmm.
Um, there are others who are still very materialistic and skeptical. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah, I watched two films recently on YouTube on this subject. And one was they were scientists, astrophysicists, and quantum physicist, nuclear physicist, and they were sitting around the table with a few religious leaders. And the gist of their conversation was understanding this field, but having this desire to manipulate it, to change it, which set off a lot of alarm bells. Then, on the other hand, I saw a Lakota Indian chief talking about the same topic, but he was talking about it from the point of view of living in harmony with it rather than manipulating it. So I think that this is a very important role of theosophy in ourselves at this point in time, is that as we enter into these finer forms of nature, we have to take ethics with us, or else we're going to end up into some trouble, I think. So maybe that's one of the reasons why there's still a veil over the understanding of elementals, that we're maybe as a whole, as a humanity, we're not ready for that yet. But Maluka, you have your hand up.
Thank you so much. It was very lovely and very inspiring. And I also love how you close it too. Um, um, you just mentioned something that is very interesting, because they say, be careful with your words, because your words are like little messengers.
Yes.
Everything we say, think, and then everything we say have a great impact in our world and us as humans. Another thing that I thought when you were describing your beautiful talk was, you mentioned Dr. Emoto with the flakes. He actually did experiment with water all over the world, and it's in YouTube. You can look it up. He was able, by saying to the water, "Thank you, water. I love you," and doing like a singing and prayer, was able to clear any toxic stuff in the water. It's
Yes.
just magnificent. That is documented, and he have a book. I even met him. I went to a what was it? Long time ago, there was a meeting of alchemist meeting, and he was there. He was very, very small, very sweet, and he was singing while he was doing the talk. He was singing, and he was cheerful and beautiful. And he was also in touch with Obama at the time, because he said that he wanted to see if they use water as an energy, because water is a potential energy, not only the solar. But then he died after that, and so it did not come to fruition. The other thing that is interesting, you were talking about children. I know somebody that had an invisible friend, and that invisible friend with this person, this little child, until one day say, "I have to go," and she asked her why, and she said, "I have to go and make another little girl happy, protect." Like the girl was getting kind of big, so but it was a friend. And then there is a movie, and I think you probably might have seen it, fairy tales of children that saw fairies, and they were able to even
Yes.
photograph it. And this is documented. This is a real, and they did a movie about it. So I highly recommend that movie if you have children. And
Yes, it
then,
is a good film.
yeah, and then about trees, you were talking about trees, and you mentioned the oak. And I remember HPB saying that when an oak tree falls, it's going to be drought. And I did make the connection because the trees connect with the rivers under, and it also protects other trees underneath, through the fungi. They just connect, and they have their own language according to science too. And everywhere there was a tree and they cut the trees, the rivers dry out and become desert. And that is happening right now in the Amazon because of the, deforestation. And last point, because all the things that you said brought so many things into my mind. The Native Americans, the one that really practice shamanism and truly love nature, they don't dare to cut the tree without a permission. They have a ceremony, they ask permission, and then they do it. The same thing with animals. in the past too. And when you go to pick up a medicine within the forest, you ask the plant if the plant gave you the permission to come and heal somebody. They said they were able to heal even AIDS by because the plant is giving you the permission to do it. Anyway, so
Thank
thank
you.
you so much. I enjoy so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Maluka. You know, it's interesting. Children around the world now in schools are performing that experiment with plants and with water and with rice and with different things in the plant kingdom. They are experimenting with the idea of positive thinking and negative thinking. And so it's quite interesting. The other thing that we can consider too with children is don't tell them that there's nothing there, because that's not true. There is something there. What you can say is that they're the ones that are in control, not the elementals. They can tell the elementals to go away. In fact, they might even be disappointed if the elementals do disappear. You might miss them. But you can let them know that they are there. There are those energies in the lives, but that with the mind of the human being, and the thinker and the chooser, that's where the power is. So
Hey, Jonathan.
Yeah. Gosh, Laura, thank you so much. One of the things that you mentioned is that the elementals are gaining experience. And normally we think about human beings gaining experience, like trial and error, making choices and so forth. And then you can think like that with animals. They're gaining experience with their different forms that they take. Plants, maybe, I guess so. Minerals, really? Okay, I guess so. But elementals, how does that work with gaining experience for elementals?
I've wondered that myself, Jonathan, and sometimes the more you study, the less you know. In trying to understand that. And one of the thoughts came to mind is when I look at those sea creatures like the jellyfish, I think of them as, because they're so nebulous and so almost formless, they look like a collection of elementals. Every form that we see in the cosmos is made up of a collection of elementals, and they must be getting something from that. They must be getting some experience. And it comes to mind, remember somewhere where HPB says we had to train our body to digest food. We had to train our body to breathe, that all of this took time. And I'm thinking that must have been done, I think, through the elementals and the training that went into that. And then the other thing that comes to mind is when I look at this jellyfish, they are like a walking, moving digestive system. That looks like they've got a heart and a digestive system and a means of locomotion.
Wow.
And, think of the elementals and the that are involved in that gathering up of all those lives, and even an oak tree that what was in that acorn that convinced all the elementals and all the elements to go up into the shape of an oak tree, and the experience that those elementals are getting in that process. It's still, again, a bit of a mystery there, but it's something worth wondering about anyway.
Yeah, if you think about along those lines about our habits, like we sometimes will make the joke that an elemental drove my car home because I was thinking about something else. Somebody must have been driving. Or just our habits when you were typing, like in a computer, at a keyboard. That does seem to be, and so that which makes me ask the question, what's the role of human intelligence with actually giving a beneficial experience? It's not that we're not using them, because it seems like that they want to serve, that they want to help, but that we need to not exploit that, but somehow work in harmony with the fact that they want to work in harmony, I guess.
Yeah. What could we ask? The question is, what does it mean to work in harmony with nature? You
Mhm.
know, does it seems to reflect on that thought and feeling that we have to work in harmony. And when you look at that diagram from 5 years of theosophy, we see that all these lives have a direction to go in. They have some place to go. You know, they're not going to be what they are right now forever. And so that we have some kind of role to play. And one of the readings that I gave, it was kind of obscure, but one of the readings that HPB indicated that we are holding these lives back. That some of these higher elementals actually don't get to go any further because of us, you know, which I thought was rather interesting. I don't know if anyone else has read more on that, but that we are actually stalling the evolution of these
Yeah.
elementals.
I believe that's in the skin of the earth too. Remember in his vision, he sees the vision of those elementals kind of in this kind of progressive march, or this kind of evolution. But then in the further development in that vision, it shows them being kind of stalled out and
Yeah,
frozen, if I remember right. Yeah.
yeah,
So
that's it. That's where it was. Yeah.
Ken's got a.
Okay, Ken? Oh, Desiree, you can.
Yes, hello there, Laura. Thank you for that wonderful presentation on the elementals. It's really quite comprehensive. I was particularly taken by the lie detector part with Baxter and the so-called, Baxter effect that plants can respond to us. And it seems like the hidden corollary of that is that from our brains and our mind and our consciousness, we emit a thought field, so to speak, in consciousness that the plant has some ability to perceive or has some capacity to sense that in some way, shape, or form. And indeed, people have looked at plant perception, and that picture of the sea slug thing you showed. Those critters have been also a model of animal perception. But coming back to this thought field idea, you mentioned some YouTube scientists. One of them was talking about his experience as this quantum scientist, quantum mechanics physicist, also a computer scientist guy on YouTube, talking about how his theory, along with another theoretical physicist in Italy, is that consciousness does not arise from our brain. It's not an epiphenomenon of our nervous system, which is what I've been taught for decades and decades in my life, in my scientific life. But the new idea of these guys is that consciousness is actually outside of our brain, and it's a field, like the Akasha or something like that. It's in a field, and that it precipitates through our brain. And so similarly with other things like trees and plants, like the Baxter plant effect thing, he's saying, hey, guess what? These trees have the ability, and other plants, to have perception, but they don't have a brain like we do. So how are they able to do that? So his conclusion is that consciousness is something that is not, as the neuroscientists say, the academic scientists that Judy was talking about, academia people, that consciousness arises from the structure of our brain. And so I'm wondering, where might I find something in the writings of Judge or Blavatsky about the source? Could it be in the Anthropogenesis volume, or the source of our mind, if you will?
Yeah. I think in the anthropogenesis at the last part, but the other thing that comes to mind is Emerson as well in Universal Mind. And I know HPB has a lot of articles on cosmic mind and universal mind. And Mr. Judge, of course, I'm not Mr. Judge, Einstein, he said back of the head ideas. Even he understood that his understanding came from that field of universal mind, didn't come from him. And so we kind of, our intention and our will are kind of like a tool that helps us to get into that universal mind where all the ideas are. That's my simple way of understanding some of the articles on cosmic mind and universal mind.
Well, thank you.
But we have the right to get into these states. They belong to us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'll definitely go in that direction, because even in Napoleon Hill's book in 1937, Think and Grow Rich, he talks about Thomas Edison, and he had a conversation that we're really made up of these atoms, or these parts that make us up. And he also talked about a famous inventor who would go into a dark closet and meditate and come up with lots of patents in the United States back in the 1920s and 30s. So like, where are these ideas coming from? It's clearly not his own physical brain, but this cosmic mind. Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for the question. And
Maluka, I think, has another.
Yeah. I was thinking about somebody's asking a question online, say, why is the fire element destroying California? I would like to say, and then you can answer as well, that most of the in our Dayton and the Palisades and all that, they think there's a connection with possible arson and electrical, problems that created. It's not that nature want to burn California, but also we have created this situation because it's karma too, in a sense, but nature is not punishing. We are the one that create the condition. They don't clean the brushes like they're supposed to, so there is neglect, there's dryness. Who create the dryness? Well, we kind of create that situation as well because of the way we treat, our environment and all that. But it's LAS. I don't know who that person is. That's my opinion. Maybe, we have other points in there. Oh, by the way, I read recently that HPV says that fire is not an element.
No, it is the cause of all the elements.
Exactly.
Well, yeah. Each of the elements exist within all the elements. There's an aspect of fire in water. There's an aspect of fire in the air. And there's an aspect of fire in the earth. That it's, yes, you're right there, Maluka.
But you know what is interesting, that how merciful karma is, because there was a warning that these winds were coming, right? There was no preparation for that. So neglect, right? Then in the other hand is nature don't want us close to them. You go by the mountains and by the beach, what we do? Pollute them and unbalance everything. We don't belong near nature. We just damage them, in my opinion. And then the other thing is that we have to take responsibility. But look at how merciful we got the winds, right? I had an incident in my house long time ago when we have another wind. I think it was 11 years ago when we had the winds in Santa Ana, and a tree fell over my garage and destroyed. I mean, it was an eucalyptus. They are notorious for falling with big winds. Anyway, so, but I didn't have control over that. But I'm just saying that we have to take responsibility. Now, the wind came, and unfortunately, a lot of people are suffering and they lost everything. We came across some couples that we tried to help them because they didn't have a place to stay. But it's the whole world is suffering, and not only us, but the worst things happening all over the world. But the thing that is interesting, that So came the wind. We got a lot of help. We got unity from Canada and Mexico and Japan. He brought a brotherhood of our neighbors to help us to this tragic moment. And that
Well,
was beautiful. In my opinion, was beautiful. Then after the wind left, we got rain. And the rain, although, create some problems, some not so bad as some people would expect it, but it brought rain. And we haven't had this much rain in I don't know how long, for the whole year. So nature is trying to heal us. It's trying to
yes.
balance the nature. Everything that we think is bad is not bad. They're cleaning the air. So we got a toxic air for I don't know how long. I lived, in Burbank. So I didn't get as much toxic as other people. It cleaned the air. Now the air is beautiful and clean. And then it brought this humanity. What the HPV said, when there is suffering, heroes come out. And how many people are helping and all this raising fund. I thought the most philosophical acts I ever seen, it was during this trial.
It's interesting, Maluka, because you wonder that when these events happen in disasters, whether in nature or man-made, that it brings out the best of our humanity. And maybe in some way that is a restoration of harmony right there. That the bad event gave all of us a chance to sort of wake up and restore that harmony through service, through helping others. But the other thing to keep in mind with nature too is that this is we're in a constant process of change. Nothing is going to stay the same. And this continent that we call home right now and we're kind of comfortable with, slowly over time is going to fall apart, disintegrate, go down, form islands, and a new continent is going to come up in the Pacific Ocean. And the movement of humanity will be so gradual that we'll leave this continent that we're on now and we'll move over to the new one. And the one that we're on now will have its period of rest or pralaya, maybe go under the water for a few million years, and then come back to the surface again, because the earth is a living, breathing thing. And nature is always in the process of becoming something else. It's change. And so, it's not out to get us, so to speak. But that's one thought that comes to mind.
Alan?
Right. Now, relative to the power of thought, that lie detector on the leaf things, that's pretty amazing. And I wonder if we're not really responding to that as we should as a society, are we? I mean, if one human's thoughts can affect a bush or a plant, then what's that doing to other people? What do our thoughts do to other people? We understand, Theosophy teaches that, but that doesn't seem to have translated into any kind of a consciousness worldwide. But I found out something recently that absolutely fascinated on the same subject relative to the placebo effect. Everybody knows about the placebo effect, but just as a quick review, it's not a psychological trick, but placebos can activate real physical changes. And so they measure this. They see that with a placebo, that endorphins, it causes endorphin, what do they call it? Endorphins, which do pain relief. And it's also an effect, it activates the immune system. And traditionally what they say that the three factors that are critical for the placebo effect are expectations, and then the two is the doctor-patient relationship, the trusting relationship between doctor, and the third is the setting. And they didn't go into any detail on that. But now here's I ask the second question, and this kind of surprised me. traditionally it's thought of as a result of the patient expectation. I'm getting something that's going to heal me, so it heals me. However, recent research suggests, so this isn't absolute proof, so keep tuned in to see, suggests that the placebo effect can still occur when the patient is unaware of receiving any treatment. And so that opens up a whole new, it's amazing enough that, the placebo effects work. For most people, that's pretty amazing. But now you've got a situation where the patient can have a positive effect, apparently, even when they are unaware that they're getting anything, any sort of treatment whatsoever. So I suppose, if you look at that from one point of view, it could be the administrator, the person who's, the doctor or the nurse who is behind it. Their mind, their thoughts are going out, and or just the sense that someone is there trying to assist the person, that the compassion, the emotional state of the people around the patient. And I don't know any of the details on this latest thing, but I think it just I like, if anybody has any comments on what they think might be going on there. It seems to me like an absolutely fascinating occurrence.
Yeah. Well, that's very good. I don't know. Did you have something to say to that, Desiree?
Well,
That
you said compassion, and it kind of hit me like that's
yeah.
what's going on there.
What did
Because
HPV say in my talk?
if you attack it from a point of, I just want to see if I can control something, and
Yeah.
just like I don't know, I can't remember. Was it Red Crow?
Yes, Red
Said,
Crow.
if you're going to attack it from the point of view of controlling nature, then you're going to end up with the opposite results. But I think with so many thoughtful people that want to simply help, they're not looking for any kind of particular results for their own benefit. They're genuinely concerned. My father would call it an unqualified concern, an unconditional concern for the life of another human being or animal or a plant. I was a child and I saw my plant dying and I just went into tears about it. And the next day it was fine. And there's something about compassion, this feeling and accountability for one another that transcends misery, and it creates these elementals that just, I shouldn't say create them, but impresses the elementals to just work on your behalf. Just
Yeah.
like the words out of The Voice of the Silence, to to work on with nature, and she will be your benefactor going forward. And so I think compassion is really at the core.
Well, that from HPB's Secret Doctrine, Volume 1, page 583, as we read, it says every elemental is a looking glass that can speak. So whatever we're giving, whatever energy, and that speaks to that idea, the placebo effect, that the energy that we're giving that elemental is going to reflect that energy back.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah.
I think we have time for one more question. I know we're running a little bit late. David, did you want to? Do you have one for us?
Well, at the risk of maybe being a little too simplistic, I think the Buddha said it in the first line of the Dhammapada, right? All that we are is a result of what we have thought.
Yes.
And if we really hold to the idea that every thought coalesces with an elemental, we're setting them marching and giving them their form, shape, quality, you might say moral effect,
Memory.
all the time. So the responsibility is really upon us, I guess.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you, David.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know I saw Jonathan at the podium there. I'm wondering if he had.
I was
And
just
Judy.
saying our time's up. That's all.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.
Oh, wow. Thanks everybody for staying with us.